Hi everybody, and welcome to Sarah's Soups episode number 2. Today, well, really over the next 2 days, we are going to be making pho. It takes a couple of days to make a really good, rich, flavorful broth, and we're going to start with roasting bones. So let's get started. The first step in making a delicious pho broth is to roast beef bones. You want to preheat the oven to 400 degrees and line a shallow baking dish with either parchment paper or tin foil like I have here. You want about 8 bones, and you can see these ones have some tissue and some meat left over on them. So hopefully you can find these at your local butcher shop. Since these are frozen, I'm gonna throw them in the oven and roast them for about 45 minutes to an hour until they're a nice golden brown. So as soon as they're done, I'll come back and show you what they look like. Okay, so I decided to check the bones after 45 minutes. And this is how we're looking. If you can see the coloring, they're a pretty good size brown. I don't want to leave them in there any longer because I don't want them to burn. So I'm going to keep them out, turn the oven off, and then we'll do the next step. The next step to make the broth after you've roasted the bones is to put them in the crock pot, and I am going to add 12 cups of water and then turn it on low and leave it overnight. One thing to mention, there's a bunch of good stuff here left, and before I add the water, I'm going to go ahead and dump any juices in there and kind of scrape off all these little bits that are left over because I want all that flavor in there. So I actually ended up adding 16 cups of water. Because I had plenty of room here at the top, you can see, still not overflowing. And we are going to turn this on low and cover it and leave it going for 12 to 24 hours. That's a big range of time, but it kind of depends on how flavorful you want it and how much time you have to make your broth. So it will reduce. That's kind of why I added the extra 4 cups, because if you leave it going for 24 hours, you're going to lose some volume there. So I'm going to put this on low, cover it, and it right now is 10 p.m. at night, so I'm going to check it at 10 a.m. in the morning, and so we'll come back and take a look then. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sarah's Soups episode 2, day 2, where we're making pho. We started last night at about 10 or 11 p.m. by roasting bones and then putting them in the crock pot to simmer overnight. It is about 11 a.m. right now, so our bones have been simmering for about 12 hours. So I'm going to flip this around and show you what we're looking like. It looks and smells delicious. I wish there was smell-o-vision. So what we're going to do at this point is turn this off. We want it to start cooling down. You'll notice that the broth is cloudy, but don't worry about that. We'll take care of that later. So I'm just going to turn the crock pot off, put the top back on, let it start cooling, and then we are going to move on to our next step. What we're going to do here, you need 1 large onion, which is what I usually use, but I had 2 small ones, so in that case that's what I'm using here. And you want at least 1 2-inch piece of ginger. I've cut the onions in half and peeled the skin off that would come off easily without peeling them fully, because you want to be able to take 1 layer off when they're done. I drizzled them in olive oil and added some salt and pepper. So we're going to put these in the oven at 400 degrees and check them in about 30 minutes. So I will see you in 30. Hi everybody. It's not quite been 30 minutes, it's been about 15. So our onions and our ginger are still roasting, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to do with the broth while those veggies are roasting. So basically, we have unplugged, turned it off, so it's starting to cool off. And like I said earlier, it's definitely cloudy because I don't usually take the time and extra step to parboil them before I do this overnight. Basically, what I'm going to do right now is start taking the bones out, and I'm going to take the inside of the crock pot out of the base so that it'll cool off a little faster. And then I'm going to end up skimming off some of the cloudy fattiness that forms on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, take all the bones out, and then I will be back in 15 to check on those onions and ginger. It's been 30 minutes that we've had the onion and the ginger in the oven, so I'm just going to take a peek in here. think I'm gonna leave it in for another maybe 10 to 15 minutes because I want that onion to be a little more golden brown. So I'm gonna close that up. Let's just go with another 10 minutes and then we'll check it again. It's actually been 45 minutes that these have been roasting. I'm gonna pull these out. I'm going to pull just, if you can see, I don't wanna touch it. We're just gonna pull off these top layers. They're gonna come off real easy. And then the ginger, we're gonna slice these into coin shapes. So we're gonna go long ways and we're gonna use these to finish up our broth. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and get those ready and I'll be right back. So I've gotten those ready. As you can see, I peeled the top layer off the onions, flipped them over. You can see how nice and brown they are. I've also cut up the ginger into little coin size shapes. So now we're gonna switch everything over to my ceramic coated cast iron pot that I use for almost every soup I make. We're gonna start with the pho spices. What I usually buy is this. It is called India Tree Pho Spice, and it has all of the spices individually that you would need in one bottle. That's why I love it. So we're gonna start by toasting these. I'm gonna turn this baby on to like medium high. I'm gonna let it heat up for a minute. We are going to do this in a dry pan because we're just gonna toast these for a couple minutes until they're fragrant. So while that's warming up, I wanna show you what I have done is just got 4 cups of the broth ready out of here. The reason I did that is because I want to be able to put some liquid in right when the spices are done toasting so they don't burn. Dump this whole baby in there. This, in Acreage, used to be able to find it at Metro Cooks, but I don't know if they carry it anymore. I did find it most recently on Amazon, so you can definitely find it there. Okay, so this is warmed up. While you're doing this, this is not the right guy to be using, so let's switch over because it's sticking to the bottom of the pan. Okay, so for toasting, FYI, you don't want to use a rubber spatula because it'll stick. So while you're doing this, just be sure to constantly stir because you do not want these to burn. And this is literally just going to take probably 2 to 3 minutes tops until you start smelling all that yummy goodness. And then after that, we are going to add the broth and then the onions and ginger. They always look so pretty, don't they? This is an important step, just like roasting the ginger and the onions, because it gives a rich, robust flavor to your broth on top of the bones that you already roasted. Definitely gives it distinct flavor from a regular soup and a regular beef broth. And that's what you want when you're making pho. Now that these are done, I am going to add this first 4 cups of the broth. And I'm measuring it because I want to know how much the volume was reduced last night cooking. So that was the first 4 cups. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have to go away for a minute, is I'm going to add all of this stuff in and then the rest of the broth, and then I'll be back. I added all of the broth, the onions, and the ginger to my stock pot with the seasonings already in there, the spices already in there. I ended up, last night we put 16 cups of water in with the bones, and I ended up with 12 cups of broth. So in order to make a full batch of this for 4 people, I added another 4 cups of water. Don't really have to worry about diluting it just by adding that much. The flavor still comes through good, because what we're gonna do as soon as this starts boiling, which it looks like it almost is, we're gonna turn it down and simmer it for another 3 hours. Also, we're gonna check it in an hour or so and maybe add a couple things, so I'll show you that when we get to the 1 hour mark. Right now, we're looking good. So I'm gonna turn this baby down. My oven stove, usually between 2 and 3 works pretty good, but you'll just have to figure out. You don't want to go going too high because you are going to leave this going for 3 hours. Also, that's another reason I added the extra water, because it is going to reduce in volume again. So I've turned it down to 2, and I'm going to cover it. and we will be back in an hour. This has been simmering for 1 hour, so we're gonna check it out. It's got a good little rolling simmering boil going there, so I'm gonna leave the temperature the same. Excuse me, I have to put the lid down because we're gonna taste the broth real quick. So I'm just gonna get a little bit of this out of here. Kind of want to be away from the, you know, you don't want big chunks of spices when you're trying to taste it. So I'm gonna try and go over this. Well, maybe we're going to the middle because I do not want big chunks of spices when I'm trying to taste this. Oop, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I always like to throw it in a shot glass to let it cool off for a few minutes before I try it out. So that's going to need to cool off for a few seconds because it's definitely going to be too hot to try right now because it's been boiling for an hour. So there's my broth. I'm going to just test out. I know it's only been an hour and we have 2 more to go, but I kind of feel like it does need a little bit of more salt. So I am going to get my fish sauce out. Of course it's backwards. Here, let's fix it. So there's the fish sauce I buy. I like to buy the premium because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 ingredients. No fake things, weird things you can't pronounce. It looks really good. Fish sauce is super strong. So I'm only gonna add probably 3 dashes, I suppose that was. And then I'm going to cover this up again. Hi everyone, I'm back. The pho broth has been simmering with all of the spices in it for 3 hours now. I tasted it earlier at the 1 hour mark and added a little bit of fish sauce, and I just actually tasted it again and it tastes superb, so I'm gonna leave it as is where we're at right now. So I'm gonna turn it off here as soon as I set down my lid. The next step is gonna be a little tricky to video because what you're going to do next is strain the broth out, because you wanna get all of these bits out and the onions out and everything so that all you're left with is straight clear broth. Now you could use cheesecloth for the spices. That would make it a little easier to get that out. However, I skip a step when I do the bones. Normally a lot of people will parboil them before they put them in the crock pot overnight to make the stock so that the broth doesn't become cloudy. Since I don't do this, the method that I use to strain the broth takes care of the impurities and gets that out. I don't have a fine mesh strainer, so basically what I do is get out here and show you, because I probably should have had that ready already. I just have one like this. I have small, medium, and large ones, but the small one works just fine. And I line it with a paper towel, and then I take the broth from this pan, pour it through that strainer lined with the paper towel into another pan of about the same size. So I'm not going to be able to video that for you, so I'm going to leave you for a few minutes and take care of that, and then I'll come back and we'll finish up. Hi everybody, welcome to the final section of Sarah's Soups episode 2. I'm here, Sean and Beth Keith's house.
How we doing?
And we're having pho. Newie's here.
Hey!
Randy's here. And that's Beth. Hi! Sarah's Soups episode 2. The last time I talked to you, I had just finished straining the broth. So all we've got to do now is assemble. So this is the broth. I'm heating it up again just to make sure it's super hot. We've got a pot of pad Thai noodles. Those have just been soaking for about 15 minutes in hot water, not boiled or anything, because when you pour the broth over them, they're going to finish cooking. This is flank steak. When I bought it, it was already sliced super thin, so I just cut it up into little chunks. Fresh basil, fresh cilantro, chopped green onions, jalapenos, and limes. Normally, I would have sprouts, but the grocery store I stopped at did not have any, so we're out on those today. Again, there's the broth, and we'll be back as soon as someone comes to assemble a plate. Start with noodles.
Just. Hello.
So noodles first, and then just go down the line and put whatever you want in there.
Grab at the same times?
Yeah, that's fine. The steak will cook when we pour the broth on, so don't worry about that. I'd recommend tearing up a couple basil leaves and cilantro. Have you not had pho at a restaurant?
I have.
Oh, okay. It's the same concept,
He just didn't
right?
have to make it himself. Yeah.
Right. That's true.
I love cilantro.
Me too. And then there's green onions, jalapenos, and lime. And then there's sriracha and hoisin sauce you can add too, if you like. And then lime, just the juice, you know.
You know what gets me? Some people think cilantro tastes like soap.
Yes.
Those
Like
people,
what?
Tastes like soap.
those people are idiots.
My brother thinks that.
Sorry.
So, next. There you go.
Wow.
Louie's next. I'm just gonna show you a couple.
Just don't judge me on the amount of meat that I just took. Deprived.
You need some iron.
I'm also taking the leaves of this and not the stems.
That is recommendable. That's a thing.
Backing out of that.
Don't forget sauce, you guys. You want, hoisin is sweet.
What's your recommendation on the sauce, the hoisin to sriracha ratio?
So I'm a wussy when it comes to heat, so I usually just put a couple drops of sriracha. But hoisin is really sweet, so I usually put like one little spoonful in mine.
So like,
So,
how's
yep,
that?
yep.
Oh. I love sriracha, so I'm gonna.
There you go. Spice it up.
I'm also gonna give it a little extra lime. That's just who I am. Maybe throwing my bits out.
I'm gonna let you do that so I can video you do
Dropped a
it.
bit.
Look at all that freaking sriracha.
How much do I need to put into this?
I just filled it to the top. Well, not overflowing. You know what I mean.
Oh,
Yep. That's all she wrote. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching Sarah Soup's episode 2 and learning how to make pho.